now joined by SABC News correspondent Blake Sifton in Tel Aviv, Israel. Good afternoon, Blake. Thank you very much for joining us. So, quite a lot of details at this point, still sketchy, but what we do know is that there has been a video that was released apparently by Israeli forces showing some of those prominent figures that were on the flotilla being surrounded by soldiers. What more do we know at this point?
Good afternoon. The interception of these flotilla boats by Israeli naval commandos began late on Wednesday night. It's carried forth throughout the morning, and we now understand that 39 of the flotilla boats have now been intercepted and boarded. Several others are still at sea, but they're suffering technical faults unrelated to the interception, and only one boat remains unaccounted for by the flotilla organizers. They also say that one boat actually reached within Gaza's territorial waters, which is within 12 nautical miles of the coast. Israeli forces used water cannons on the flotilla boats, and we understand from organizers that at least one boat was rammed. However, there have been no reported injuries. The hundreds of activists, lawyers, journalists, and members of parliament who are on these boats have been detained. They are being brought to the port of Ashdod to be processed and eventually deported. And we understand that that first batch of the detainees is expected to arrive pretty much right now as we speak. Of course, Israel has intercepted previous flotillas in the past, as recently as June and July, but this was by far the largest flotilla ever assembled to challenge the maritime blockade that's been in place since 2009, and the military itself acknowledged that intercepting it would be uniquely challenging.
But nevertheless, what has the Israeli force said about that interception? That why specifically would they want to intercept? Because in this instance, one would assume they're not a threat. This is a humanitarian aid initiative where it's essentially to bring the much needed aid to the people of Gaza. So what has been their official message as to why exactly they would intercept if there was no imminent threat?
Well, they've had a naval blockade of Gaza for on 16 years now at this point, and they say, of course, that it's justified now because of the war in Gaza. They say that under international law, they are allowed to intercept boats trying to break a naval blockade during a war. They say they need to prevent weapons from getting in the hands of Hamas and things like that. Now, they've asked and told the flotilla that they could drop off their cargo, their humanitarian aid, their food, their medicine, their equipment in Cyprus or at an Israeli port, and it would be brought to Gaza. However, the flotilla organizers refused that. They said they had no faith that that would actually happen. Of course, it's not really even a question of if there's enough aid to get into Gaza. It's the process of how you get aid into Gaza, and there's massive bottlenecks at the border between Israel and Gaza. The UN has complained that they have hundreds and hundreds of trucks waiting, and that red tape and paperwork and permissions mean that they can't get enough aid into the strip.
You've indicated that this is probably the biggest interception yet of a flotilla. So one did assume that given that there was so much attention, media attention in particular, to this flotilla, that perhaps we wouldn't have seen such an interception, but perhaps a vetting of those individuals and ensuring that there are no weapons that are going to perhaps be brought into the Gaza Strip. So one still says, or many, pardon me, would still wonder that wouldn't they go that route, given the much attention that this specific flotilla has enjoyed, that they would rather opt to go the vetting route of the individuals to show or indicate that they're non-partisan?
They were never going to allow this flotilla to reach the coast of Gaza. They've enforced this blockade for so many years, and even if it were to reach the coast, we have to remember, of course, that the ports along the entirety of Gaza are destroyed. The port in Gaza City is in ruin. So even how the equipment and the medicine and all the humanitarian aid would have even reached the port and the shore is a question. And again, we have to remember that there are Israeli naval vessels off of Gaza regularly shelling Gaza. They are bombing Gaza City. They're shelling other areas. It's not only airstrikes and tanks, it's gunboats. So I don't think there was ever a situation in which the Israeli military was going to allow these boats to actually reach the coast. It would have been incredibly dangerous, but again, we need to remember that it's not only the war. They've been maintaining this blockade for 16 years, during wars, but also during large stretches of peace. So they've never allowed flotillas to break this blockade, and they were not going to at this stage.
So another confirmation, nevertheless, is that there are no individuals that have been harmed. If anything, Israeli forces are just going to ensure that they're deported back to their countries of origin.
That's right. We understand that there are hundreds of police officers waiting at the port of Ashdod, and these hundreds of activists and lawyers and members of parliament and journalists and regular civilians, they will be processed. They will be eventually deported. It's also Yom Kippur today, which is the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, and the entire country is shut down. So the process will probably be slightly delayed because of that. But yes, they will be deported likely very promptly once they reach the port of Ashdod.
All right, Blake, thank you very much for that reportage.